Hello and welcome to the Gale Blade News. For those interested in news of the UK, from those from the UK and beyond its borders. Today we're focusing on the situation to do with coronavirus, and it says that, according to the Scottish Government, face coverings will become mandatory to wear in any public shop. The use of face coverings will become mandatory in shops in Scotland as coronavirus restrictions are eased, Nicola Sturgeon has said. Non-essential shops have reopened in Scotland, and bars and restaurants are now due to open up again later this month. The First Minister said the 2-metre physical distancing rule would be eased for some premises when the country enters the next phase of its route map on the 10th of July. And she said face coverings would be mandatory in shops from that date. Ms Sturgeon also announced that children under the age of 12 would no longer need to maintain physical distancing from other households while outdoors from Friday. The First Minister had ordered further scientific study of the 2-metre or 6 foot 6 inches physical distancing rule after it was announced a 1-metre plus system would be introduced in England. She said advice was clear that as the distance between people decreases, the risk of transmitting the virus increases, but said this could be mitigated by other measures. Serious economic implications. The First Minister said the general advice will remain unchanged, and that as far as possible, people should remain at 2 metres away from other households. But she said in view of the serious economic implications of maintaining the rule in all circumstances, she would allow exemptions for specific sectors where a 1-metre or 3 foot 3 inch distance could be used if other safety measures are introduced. So which lockdown rules will change next and when? An example of this would be a pub or restaurant being allowed to relax the physical distancing rule when they can reopen from the 15th of July if plastic screens are used to separate customers or better ventilation is installed. Businesses will also be expected to display clear signage to show people are entering a 1-metre zone, and to collect a list of customers and their contact details to help trace if there is an outbreak. The change to the distancing rule will be introduced from the start of Phase 3 of the government's route map towards lifting lockdown, currently set to be reviewed on the 9th of July. And Ms Sturgeon said that from the start of Phase 3, the use of face coverings would become mandatory in shops, with exemptions for young children and people with certain health conditions. So, who will need to wear a mask? She said that using face coverings, which are already mandatory on public transport, could help reduce the risk of transmission indoors and provide an additional layer of protection. We have proceeded for a period with a voluntary approach to this, she said. Some people are complying and some are not. I'm not pointing fingers or trying to blame people for that. We have to make a judgment if we're heading into a period where more people are interacting. And we've been having a discussion with more sectors, like retail, about reducing distancing, and that increases the importance of mitigations like face coverings. It's the business group CBI Scotland welcomed the easing of the social distancing rule, saying it would make a substantial difference to the viability of thousands of firms in Scotland, particularly in the leisure, tourism and hospitality sectors. However, the Scottish Grocers Federation said it was extremely disappointed at the move to make face coverings mandatory, saying it would increase pressure on staff to enforce measures. Ms Sturgeon said shop staff would not be expected to enforce the rule, with the police instead mandated to issue fixed penalty notices to people not wearing face coverings. She accepted that this may not be an easy rule to police, saying officers would act very proportionately and sensitively. The Scottish Government has targeted effectively eliminating the virus north of the border, with the number of people estimated to be infectious falling to 1,500 by the end of June. Ms Sturgeon said the continued low prevalence of the virus meant further changes to lockdown restrictions could be introduced. The current 5-mile limit on travel for leisure purposes is to be eased from Friday, with people urged to behave responsibly and be sensitive to people living in rural areas. However, there will be an exemption for some towns in the Dumfries and Galloway area where an outbreak of the virus is being investigated. 10 positive cases have been identified around Annan and Gretna. Although Ms Sturgeon said she was very hopeful, this outbreak will be contained. She said people in surrounding areas should assume there is a higher risk of infection right now and avoid travelling, adding, "I am genuinely sorry about that, but this outbreak is sharply reminding us just how infectious COVID is." So what are your opinions on wearing face masks? Do you think it'll make any difference? Do you think maybe the threat doesn't come so much from the people of Scotland, more from the borders that they share with England? Or do you think nothing about this is very practical and it's actually making a situation worse? Whatever you think, leave your comments down below, like the video if you enjoyed it, and don't forget to subscribe.